A new report from the New York Times is shedding light on Chuck Schumer's behind-the-scenes attempt to get Joe Biden to drop out of the presidential race, and some of the revelations are shocking. Even before the disastrous June debate, Schumer and the Democrats had concerns that Biden wasn't a viable candidate. But as the Times put it, Schumer, like every other Democrat in a position of power, had chosen to do nothing. But then the debate happened, and Schumer started getting desperate calls from people in the Democratic Party who wanted Biden out. So he decided he had to do something. He didn't want to confront Biden directly and thought waging a public campaign against him would make him defensive and ultimately be counterproductive. But behind the scenes, he eventually started telling donors and members of Congress to, quote, call whoever you know in the campaign, call the White House. On July 8th, Biden sent a defiant letter to members of Congress saying he was staying in the race and expected them to fall in line with his decision, which Democratic lawmakers were reportedly furious about. At a tense July 11th meeting between Democratic senators and Biden, things erupted. The usually quiet Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island said he could no longer support his commander-in-chief unless Biden could produce 2 neurologists to issue a public report saying he was fit to serve, and then hold a news conference where anyone could ask questions. But Biden remained undeterred. Finally, on July 13th, Schumer made the trip to Biden's Rehoboth beach house to make the case to him directly that he should drop out. He told Biden, if there's a secret ballot, Mr. President, my guess is you at most get 5 yeses. And he implied to Biden that his inner circle hadn't been telling him how dire the situation actually was. Mr. President, you're not getting the information as to what the chances are. When he asked whether Biden had talked to his pollsters about his chances of winning the race, the president shook his head. Well, I have talked to them, Schumer said. My guess is you have about a 5% chance. None of your pollsters disagree with me. He told Biden that if he refused to step aside, it would be a massive blow to Democrats and to his own legacy. If you run and you lose to Trump and we lose the Senate and we don't get back the House, that 50 years of amazing, beautiful work goes out the window. But worse, you go down in American history as one of the darkest figures. Just over a week later, Biden made the announcement that he was ending his campaign. And then in the election, all of those things that Schumer warned about happened. I mean, it seems like a little too late, Michael. All of these stories are coming out now. There's like a week left, or barely, a couple days.
Well, I don't think the stories coming out any earlier, Jordan, would have made a huge difference. I think the notion that, because you don't want to create a fight among rank and file Democrats, because there are a lot of people that still wanted Joe Biden to stay in the race. I think it changed, the equation changed after that debate for many of them. And I did reporting well before the debate at the beginning of last year that through a source that I had that at the White House who said that there were people at the White House urging him, that had been urging him since before Thanksgiving, that would have been Thanksgiving of 2023, I guess, to leave the race, and it wasn't happening. His sister, Valerie Biden Owens, is really the person that he turns to for all of that more than anybody, and has throughout his 50-year career. Valerie Biden Owens was all in, it seems, on him staying in the race, and it didn't matter what people at the office were saying if people at home were telling me ought to stay in the race. It did change afterwards, and to Schumer's credit, within a week, first of all, you have to realize it's very difficult to give up the presidency, right? I mean, you're the most powerful person in the world. Whether or not you are completely selfish, you did not get there without an ego. And I think that that when you are told to not run for president, when you're you did beat the guy who's going to be running against you, there's a part of you that thinks, of course I can beat this guy. Of course I'm going to stay in the race. I'm not going to be pushed around by these people who don't know any better. Well, they did know better. He probably should have left earlier. We don't know if that would have made any difference at all, but we know what happened when he didn't. But I would say that Schumer's efforts are commendable, because it sounded like they were concerted. They happened quickly. And as you said, a week later, he dropped out of the race. A week after Schumer threatening him with being called a dark figure in American history. Jack Reed, by the way, holds a lot of water. He is a serious senator. He's an Army veteran. He also, like Biden, is a Roman Catholic, and they shared that together when they were in the Senate to a great degree. So I think that probably mattered to President Biden as well. Again, yeah, I wish he had been told that earlier, right? But sure, he certainly responded to it once told, at least by Schumer.
Woz, what do you think?
It's hard for me to want to give these guys some type of credit for this when it was plainly obvious to the entire country for 2 years before this guy dropped out that he was completely cooked. Poll after poll of Democrats, registered Democrats, were like, this guy is finished. We need a different candidate. The idea that the people that are closest to this situation, the freaking Senate leader, like it took the horrible debate for everybody to realize this guy was beyond his skis. I think it's a load of crap, to be honest, man. Like this idea that nobody could have foreseen that this disaster was on its way. Everybody in America could see it. Like the citizens could see it. Everybody knew this guy was done. And just the idea that's like, well, I tried my best at the 11th hour to finally push this guy over. I guess they deserve a little bit of credit, but I'm not inclined to give it to these guys, man. This entire Biden thing, where one, when he ran the first time, he pretended that he was gonna be a bridge. That was his whole thing. I'm just doing this to get Trump out the way, and then we're gonna pass it off to these other great Democrats. And of course, he never did it. And so this idea that at the 11th hour, they finally realized Joe Biden, who was hiding from the press, his entire freaking team was hiding this guy. Weekends at Bernie's with this dude, record low press interviews, sit downs, ducking the Super Bowl, just a free commercial for your campaign, completely ducking it because this guy's completely cooked. And this idea that Schumer and them was like, oh, I guess it is time for him to leave. He got smoked by Donald Trump in the debate. I don't want to hear it from these guys, to be honest.
Yeah, there's more, but I want to go back to something that Michael said, because I think while there was a push to get Biden out, a lot of people looked to progressives and members of the squad specifically to lead those calls. And what Michael said is absolutely critical. First of all, people need to recognize, if they're still upset about how progressives handled the situation, Biden was never going to listen to you. That had zero influence over Biden's decision. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, whomever, calling on Biden to step out would not work. And it was people like Jack Reed. Those are the people who are going to be significant in that debate. He's going to worry about what the moderates and what the legacy Democrats think. He doesn't care about progressives. And it was unfortunate to see a lot of people have a knee-jerk reaction to that, because they just wanted the Democrats or they wanted the progressives to be defiant in that moment. But you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, and that's what they were trying to do in that moment if he stayed in the race.
Jordan, Jamal Bowman was supposed to get this done? Are we serious?
Right. Yeah, that wasn't gonna happen.
That makes absolutely no sense.
And also, somebody could have run against him. Somebody who was possibly a better candidate than my friend, and somebody who would have been able to do what Ted Kennedy tried to do to Jimmy Carter, and actually get a movement and unfortunately run against President Biden. I gave him 2 years, and I don't think he should have run in 2020 saying I'm going to be a one-term president. But I heard what he said was, and I heard him say I'm going to be a bridge president. And a bridge president was the guy who was going to hold my hand and take me to the next chapter and then drop me off so that somebody else could take the baton. And he never passed the baton. So I think that, yeah, it's very difficult for a president to to leave a race. I can't imagine it really happening, and he did do that. But he would have seen the writing on the wall a lot earlier if there was a well-funded campaign from a senator, a governor, a reasonable candidate who could go up against him and raise that money. That said, it's very difficult to do that with a sitting president. Ted Kennedy was able to do it because he was Ted Kennedy. There are not very many people who could do it, so it's easy for me to sit here and say you should run. But raising money against a sitting Democratic president from Democratic donors, a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, and we've got more. This is already influencing the next DNC chair debate. Now, 6 months after Biden's decision to drop out and 2 months after Kamala Harris's loss to Trump, the Democratic Party is still scared to touch the Biden question. Last night, a forum was held featuring the candidates for DNC chair, including Ken Martin, Ben Wickler, Martin O'Malley, Marianne Williamson, Jason Paul, Dr. Contessa Hathaway, and Nate Snyder. And Biden barely came up. It took 40 minutes for him to come up at all. And when they were finally forced to talk about him, none conceded that Biden should have dropped out earlier than July. Take a look.
Did President Biden staying in the race as long as he did not only hurt the party's chances at winning, but also potentially damage the brand of the party at the same time? Chair Martin, let's start with you.
Well, it's an academic exercise. We cannot change the past. So, the reality is all we can do is look back and help us inform the future.
I also choose not to call it an autopsy, and I also choose not to engage in your questions that I'm sure will be something that history books will study.
Our problem is we trusted you all. Your job was to inform the American people about what was going on in this country. But instead of informing the American people about what's going on in this country, you asked the same kind of gotcha questions that I am so sick and tired of hearing from journalists in this country. Joe Biden did a good job as president. He got good things done. And none of you ever said it because you wanted to ask, what's wrong with Joe Biden today? What's wrong with Joe Biden today? What's wrong with Joe Biden today? It is your people's fault, and I'm sick of it. I'm sorry.
Interestingly, the candidates for vice chair, however, seemed to be more willing to say Biden should have dropped out sooner. Here's what David Hogg had to say.
I think that this, broadly speaking, is more emblematic of a problem we have within the party, where anybody who did say, like Adam mentioned, anybody who did say that he needed to step aside or thought that he did, even with respect, was immediately ostracized. And it was a huge problem for the party. We are not a cult. We should not be a cult. We need to embrace the fact that there's a diversity of opinions here and not hate other people for having those diverse opinions, because increasingly we are becoming a party of subtraction and not addition. And we need to not tell voters not to believe their eyes or their pocketbooks. That's why we lost this election. We told them, no, prices are not too high. Look at the GDP. Look at all these other countries. And we said, don't look at President Biden. He's not too old. Don't believe your eyes.
I mean, am I expecting too much from the DNC chair candidates to at least acknowledge this?
Gotcha. Joe Biden never answered questions. What gotcha questions were people asking this dude? This dude was literally hiding from the public. That's all this guy did. Just this idea that people the public was questioning. It wasn't just like journalists. Journalists are responding to genuine problems people are having with Joe Biden's presidency. He seemed like he wasn't up to the task. That's what people were perceiving. Like this idea that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris lost because of journalism. That's what these people are going for. Again, and this is supposed to be politics, meaning what? Persuading people to be on our side. And this is the Democratic Party's attitude always. The Democratic Party can never fail. The Democratic Party can only be failed by us and the stupid plebes out there who don't put them in power to do absolutely nothing for anybody, even when they get it. This is insane.
It's hard to disagree with a lot of what Waz is saying. The other side of that coin and what we're looking at here is people are running to head the Democratic Party, and the Democrats really like Joe Biden. So saying an ill word about Joe Biden when you're trying to win, that's not going to get you the votes that you need to become the head of the DNC, unfortunately. It may be dishonest, it may be evasive, it may be a lot of the things that we're sitting here and criticizing, but it might be smart politics if you want the job. That said, only one of them is going to get it, and there are enough minor candidates there that somebody should set up and say, yeah, yes, of course, and maybe get a little attention for that. But I understand the politics of not wanting to criticize the standard bearer of the party just for the next few days at least anyway, and do that. So I get that. Also, I think since this happened, Faz Shakir got in the race, did he not?
He did.
Okay,
yeah.
so there you have somebody from a wing of the party that has not had a lot of breath and a lot of air at the DNC, and if he is able to make waves there, that could change the whole tenor of things.
Yeah,
I just watched the interview with that brother. He got some good ideas, y'all.
Yeah,
he's
he
great.
Definitely does.
Absolutely great. One thing before we move on to our next story, what you picked up on was criticizing the reporters. I mean, like blaming them for not covering it or not talking about serious issues. I mean, they were raising this as an issue at least in 2023. And I think maybe before then. You can go all the way back to 2019 when other Democratic primary candidates were raising it as an issue. You had Cory Booker and Castro, and they were derided as conspiracy theorists for simply pointing out that Biden might have cognitive decline. Reporters covered this to some extent well before this past summer, and they were criticized, insulted, shut down, said it was fake news, maybe not that explicit term, but the same sentiment. And then
Jordan, it was deep fakes.
I was just getting to that.
It was some deep fakes.
It wasn't deep fakes, it was cheap fakes. When the problem really started to get bad in the summer, they were saying all of those clips were cheap fakes, and we had this big national conversation about these cheap fakes that were influencing our media. Biden drops out. Have you heard that term ever again?
It's true. Yeah.
Come on.
And I heard it differently than you did, Jordan. I heard this guy criticizing them for covering it too much, for being hyper focused on Biden's fitness for office and not focused enough on the Democratic agenda, et cetera, so that was what the dereliction of duty on the part of the reporters was. So I heard it both ways, and
yeah,
both ways don't hold water.
Yeah, well, either way, they weren't going to be happy.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you got to do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.